What's up? It's Peak City Midweek. We haven't done one of these in a while, and we figured we'd hop on and do one about the battle-ready soul.
Yes.
We've been processing through that and how to be optimistic, confident, and humble. 3 things that our world does not nurture all that well.
What? I get that from Instagram all the time.
Right? Doesn't social media just make you so much more optimistic, so much more confident in who you are, and so much more humble? Like you don't need to promote yourself at all.
Yeah,
It's great.
No.
It's amazing. So we're gonna dive deeper into that today and just see how to apply. Because it's big, man. It's big not just for us as individuals, but I think for our church culture, it's a big deal. So we'll hop in and see where the conversation goes today.
Pumped about it.
All right. What's up, guys?
What's
going on?
How are you?
Good. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah, man. Been a while.
We've been digging into some really neat concepts, like you alluded to, and I'm really excited to walk further down that road.
Yep.
It's been such a life-giving series. Like, I've enjoyed it.
For sure. Yeah, there's been multiple times I've been listening through the series and been like, this deserves to be talked about on the podcast.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
This needs a couple minutes to stew. So
Yeah,
I'm
that's
excited.
cool.
Yeah.
That's cool, man.
I'm taking hecka notes, dude.
Yeah, for sure, man.
It's so good.
Well, we talked through, the whole concept for the series is that the world, and if you believe in the devil, we do. Even if you don't believe in the devil, you're not sure about faith yet, you can feel some sort of unseen force presence that's actively fighting against you.
Absolutely.
And so we just talk about how, like, the natural pull is towards character traits and ideologies and approaches to life that aren't helpful for us. And so we talk through, the battle ready soul is first and foremost, we said optimistic, it was weird to talk about optimism in church. I felt a little like I was about to be Tony Robbins there, like just power positive thinking my way through this thing.
Yep.
But man, I see so much in scripture of optimism. Paul's like, man, like this is going to be good. The best is yet to come. Like he just seems like he's so focused on it. And the thing that stood out to me as I was studying it is that line that we use, that our world gets us to pretend that optimism and pessimism are 2 equal forces.
Yes.
And that super patronizing line of like, the glass is either half empty or half full.
Gosh, I heard that so many times.
Oh, that's it. It's just like you're either an optimist or a pessimist. You either see it this way or that way, but it's really the same thing. It's like,
Right.
oh my gosh, it's such garbage.
Yeah.
So how did you guys see, like, in thinking through optimism and processing through that at a spiritual level in your own lives as a church, how do you see the concept of optimism being beneficial, being difficult?
I just was like moved and kind of convicted in how much that is just a heart posture. Like it's not necessarily like optimism we assign, I think, to like emotions or outlook. And like, yes, that does apply, but I think it starts in your heart.
Yeah.
And it's just what you believe about who God is to you. You know what I mean? And I realized like when I am pessimistic, it's because I'm probably not leaning into or like really trusting in who God says he is and like what he will do.
Absolutely.
So that's where I was convicted, where I was like, man, I would say I'm a fairly optimistic person, but I can get in a rut real quick.
Yeah.
And
That's
be
real.
like, this is all like everything's downhill and just have a really rough outlook. So I was just convicted by how much am I actually placing my trust in God's promises and about who he is to us. And
So, and isn't
So
that funny
good.
how we do that? We think that optimism is a more emotional response, whereas pessimism, what do pessimists usually call themselves?
Realists.
Realists.
Yeah. I'm
Which is a more
really
rational
Yeah.
thing. And we think that optimism is like emotional, pessimism is rational.
Right.
And actually, they're both emotional and rational.
Yeah.
Like there's
Like Tony Robbins versus is it Stephen Hawking,
Sure.
Yeah. You know?
supposedly. But I could. That's wild. That's so true.
But it has to be based in the reality, I think, of looking back at who God is, looking back at what he's done for us. Those are rational thoughts.
Yeah.
But they should lead you to an emotional response.
100%.
Absolutely. Well, and it's funny because I remember, I think it was after the second message of this series. So we'd kind of carved out a lot of discussion and points on optimism. I wrote down, again, in my phone, Nate, I'm the weird note taker guy. And I was like, the limits of my optimism create the limits of my world. Like I found that to be entirely true.
Yeah.
I could walk into church and say God does or doesn't do miracles, that expectation or that level determines what I take out of that room.
Yeah.
And I hadn't thought that way until I heard you talking about what happens when you believe the myth
Yeah.
of, well, pessimism versus optimism. So I've been walking away and been slowly working through that. Like, well, what other places am I, awareingly being pessimistic?
Mm-hmm.
So how do I push those boundaries out and believe in a bigger God who could actually do some of those things?
Yeah.
And it really has been life-giving, but man, the work is real.
The work is real. I have found, it's so funny, like preaching period, you have to get up there with like confidence and declare what you know is true.
Yes.
Comma, and you struggle with it and screw it up and
Yep.
the whole deal. So it's like, I know an optimistic mindset is what God wants for me. I know it reflects his character, all that. Also, like this past Sunday, I was struggling with getting my sermon really locked in and feeling good about it. And I thought in my mind, like, well, this is the Sunday that I start to suck as a preacher. Like this is the Sunday, it's all downhill from
funny.
here.
Yeah.
And it ended up being one of our best and biggest Sundays ever as a church. And I looked around, I was like, oh my gosh, look at what we've all built together. Look at what God's doing. It was an amazing day. But going into it, I actually had a pessimistic mindset. But I had to push through. You see, I think you have to figure out how mentally or even emotionally, if you're feeling pessimistic, you have to then push past it and put in the work to then behave optimistically.
Well, and you touched, I think one of your main points was that an optimistic mindset sees obstacles as opportunities for growth.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good.
I love like Stoic philosophy. Like I try to tie it into or principles into
it fits
the way
I like it.
the way that it fits into my faith.
Sure.
There are parts of it that relate well, but one of the main tenets of Stoic philosophy is the obstacle is the way.
Yeah.
And you said that, and I was like, spot on.
Dude, that's so
I think
good.
there are a lot of Christ-like principles in Stoicism,
Absolutely.
but when I heard that, I was like 100%. And for me, it stuck out to me. And as you built on the series, as we've worked through it, it was just so fascinating to me that the three things that we've touched on don't normally coexist well.
Yeah.
Like optimism,
confidence,
and humility. Like usually one of those is coming. One of those is coming at the detriment of another one.
That's right.
Like,
humility would come at the detriment of confidence.
correct.
Or
Yes.
Or vice
humility would
versa.
come at the detriment of optimism.
Yeah.
Well, and what was your line yesterday? 'Cause again, it was so just succinct.
That humility is not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because that's what it says in, was it Philippians? That's where you went, right?
Yeah.
To do something without you in mind, like looking at the other person first. And I was like, man, such a good tie. And even what you guys are talking about, moving that over towards optimism, like maybe there's a little bit of a conflict. You're like, well, I got to work through me first, right? To bring what I need to bring to the thing. So I'm curious on the level of how you guys practically work through that. Because for me personally, what I'm stumbling into, this learning on optimism, is if I'm like, God, and I feel pessimistic, I'll often say, okay, hold on. What does God believe about this thing?
Yep.
And then, takes me to scripture or someone I know who can maybe fill in some gaps for me. And then I have to come back and say, now that I know what the truth is, what does God want from me? And I have to figure that out.
Yep.
And that's hard work.
Yeah.
It's much easier to be like, it's not that big of a deal. I can get a lot out of today. I can just push through.
Yeah.
And it's like, how much did you leave behind if you move forward that way? So for you guys practically, what are some of your steps to like, dang it, I'm feeling pessimistic? You would do what?
Yeah. I think for me, it's almost always a couple of things. One would be just like, and it's going to sound Tony Robbins-ish or whatever. We said Tony Robbins so much in this podcast.
Like,
nothing
hey,
against
we
him.
need to
Real
Tony-
quick,
can
we
we
need
get
to
a
bring
Tony
back
Robbins
show notes.
counter?
Can we put him in the show notes?
We'll link to Tony Robbins in the show notes.
we need a ding on the bottom
that's
that
right,
counts
yeah.
Tony Robbins mentions.
But like literally, there are just like declarations that I process through and I say out loud and I pray through of, before I get up to preach, if I'm not feeling confident, even if I am feeling confident in it, there's just things I say of like, no, God has approved me and entrusted me with this message.
Yeah.
And so I shouldn't get up there and just like say it weak. I should get up there and say it strong because God's given it to me and he's approved me for it. He's prepared me for this.
Absolutely.
So it's just like, I think those, there's a lot of daily declarations out there that you can pray and you can say that help you develop that optimistic mindset. But then also I think another big part of it is worship.
Absolutely.
I mean, that to me, that's the power of weekly
Absolutely.
worship and daily worship. Weekly worship with the congregation, daily worship on your own.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That's what helps you get back into, okay, God is good.
Yeah.
God's in control.
I think worship instills all three things we've talked about.
sure.
Like every time I worship, I'm more optimistic.
Yep.
I'm more confident in like, I feel like I know that God is going before me and is behind me.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I'm always humbled by worship where I'm like,
Yep.
it's something greater than me and it takes me out of myself.
Yep. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's great, man.
It's such a perspective shifter, like, right? That's
Yeah.
what you're getting at. Like, if you come in pessimistic, but you gotta see these truths on this screen or this line or whatever, and you're seeing it, and it's like, I could see a victory, just to name a song, right?
Yeah.
And it's like you
You
are
take
either going
what
to be
the enemy
very
meant for
miserable
evil.
for 5 minutes,
Yeah.
or you're going to start changing your mind.
That's right. Yeah.
Because it's like, what do you do when it's like everything that's happening that could be perceived as evil, God, you can work for good. And if I sing that, albeit annoyingly for 5 minutes, you have a choice to make.
Yeah,
What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Where do you want to go?
for sure.
Well, it's like yesterday we were singing, the new song you guys introduced. He
Firm
won't.
foundation.
Yeah,
he
firm
won't.
foundation. Yeah. Firm foundation. And there's a lyric in it that says, rain came, wind blew, but my house is built on you.
Yes.
And I was literally turning around looking at our church as we were singing it, and I spotted like 6, 7, 8 different people that I know their stories, and I know that rain is there right now, wind is blowing right now,
Dang.
but their house is built on Jesus. And they were just singing it, hands raised, tears in their eyes. I'm like, that's
Power.
That's the power of worship that takes people who are in the worst circumstances and actually instills in them confidence, humility, and optimism.
So good.
It's nuts.
Love it.
Also, y'all crushed that song yesterday. I was
was so
going
good.
freaking nuts, man. I told Brittany, I was like, I cannot believe this song is being sung in our church right now. It's so beautiful. It's so good. It's just powerful.
Yeah.
So,
and shout out to any of you guys who happen to be watching it, just creative team, guys behind the cameras and stuff. Like, yeah, they're legends, man.
Yeah.
Legends. But so good.
So optimism was week 1 and week 2. We did 2 weeks on optimism.
It needed 2 weeks though.
We needed 2 weeks on it. Yeah.
So
We're probably
good.
going to come back to it more regularly throughout the year. But
And if someone wants to go back, right? Aren't those on our YouTube channel
Yeah,
somewhere?
Yeah, they are.
Truly, like put that in the show notes. Go back and watch those. I could not be more encouraged. It was so good.
week 3, the second part of the series was talking about confidence, right? And so we talked about how insecurity is actually this like built-in alarm system to tell you that you're receiving your confidence from the wrong source.
Yep.
Right? And that we actually don't receive confidence from ourselves. Like the world says, if you want confidence, look within. But that's not where confidence comes from. External sources always. It's always other people's affirmations and validations.
Yeah. And that's where it's challenged too, though, right?
Yep.
Like, I can't tell you just a little bit about my story. When I first started, I think the 7 or 8 worship teams that I had felt led to try out for, I didn't make. And I remember being like, how dare you? But it steals confidence.
Yeah.
But through, like you're talking about, persevering in this journey of confidence, I had to get to the point where I was like, they're identifying something in me that isn't ready.
Yep.
What's wrong with that? Like nothing.
Right.
The question is, will I do the work?
Right.
So that externally, like you said, it feeds the other direction.
Right.
It was life-changing for me.
Yeah, because if your confidence, and we said we got to constantly come back to God, to connect to God for our confidence. If God called you to be a worship pastor, He put that gift in you.
Yes.
That does not mean that the gift is already developed. It's on you to develop it.
And that's exactly what they were saying. And I remember, dude, I spent 2 years being mad. In my personal experience, it wasn't mad at God. It was mad at the church. Like, oh, you're just and I went that dark road. And I remember it was the people in my life around me at the time. They were like, they're kind of right though. Like your voice is and you don't understand much of the Bible yet. Like, why would God give you that platform? And it was just like, ugh.
Yeah.
Okay.
But your confidence had to come from God that He had put you on this path.
Exactly.
And so you will put in the work.
And I did.
You will go
And still do.
through the feedback process and the growth process.
Can I share that verse that hit me?
Yeah,
and
for
just
sure.
in my personal journey. It's in Hebrews chapter 10, verse 35, and it says this. The writer of Hebrews says, "Do not throw away your confidence. It will be richly rewarded because you need to persevere so that when you have done the will of God, you will receive what He has promised." And I remember being like, I'm going to choose to believe that's true. even if it takes 7 years, 9 years, 10 years. And for me, it was actually, I think, almost 8 years that got me to the point where I was winning mostly.
Yeah.
Not by any means perfectly, but winning mostly the battle of confidence.
Yep.
And been now working in a way like serving in the church where I want to instill that confidence into people.
Yep.
Like God has put greatness in every single one of us.
Yep.
And I do find like healthy churches, great places believe that and they feel that calling, like what do I do to unearth that gold in you? How do I pull it out?
Yeah.
Because that's where the journey is.
Yep. It's beautiful.
I found myself during this message, and I'm still even hearing y'all talk. I think the world gives you like two options for like, it's very like there's a binary. Like you're either confident, and that comes with like a side of arrogance, because that's just the natural outflow of like worldly confidence.
Absolutely.
Or in an effort to combat arrogance, you're like self-deprecating. And that's my favorite thing about like biblical confidence and like what we're talking about is and I mean, that's following Jesus in general.
Yeah.
Defies what the world tells us is our only options.
Yeah.
But it splits right down the middle.
Yeah.
And I've done both. Like I growing up was super insecure and thought, well, I'll fake confidence really well, and which really looks like arrogance,
Right.
And because you're operating out of insecurity, you're even probably more boisterous and loud and annoying in my case.
So you
and
mean
then
the worship leader like sing with me, sing with me, sing with me, sing with me. I've totally been there.
And then once I realized that was a problem of mine, in an effort to combat that, I went the opposite way and was like I was like in an unhealthy way, like self-deprecating, because I'll get ahead of my arrogance and just like only dwell on my my shortcomings.
Yeah.
And it took me a second, and I realized. I read the book. My dad suggested it. It's called "The Freedom of Self-Forgetfulness" by Tim Keller.
Love it. Great book.
Incredible. It's like almost like a
Show
pamphlet.
notes.
It's like 50 pages. It's amazing.
Yeah.
But he talks about how whether you're thinking a lot about yourself in a positive way or a negative way, it's still narcissism.
Yep.
Like me dwelling on my shortcomings is still me thinking about me.
Yep.
And that hit me hard because I was like, you're still self-obsessed. You're spending all this time thinking about you.
Good
it's
Lord.
just negative now, but it doesn't make it any more healthy. So that was the beginning of me trying to dig out of that pit. And something I've learned is just that like confidence looks like a confidence in who God has created you to be despite your own shortcomings.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're hitting here.
Oh, yeah.
Good.
So when you were talking about all that, I'm just like, my mind was just like rolling.
Yeah. Oh man, like and that insecurity, you know, I'm trying to train myself to just to feel the insecurity when it comes, and then to just like try to find the root, like where is it coming from? You know,
That's a great point.
Because if I can identify where it's coming from, then I can declare the truth over it and say, no. Like, I mean, like legit, yesterday, I'm getting ready to get up and preach first service. And I mean, this happens. Like some people may know, some people may not. But like, even though I speak every week, I still have times where I'm like nervous right before. I mean, like I feel like if you're not nervous, you're not taking the opportunity serious enough.
For sure.
So I mean, I still have like
Pre-game jitters,
a little anxiety, shortness of breath, all that stuff.
Yep.
And right before I was getting ready to preach first service, I started feeling a little anxious and a little insecure. I was like, dang, I don't know if this is going to go good or not. Dang. And I was like, where's that coming from? And I realized your dad was in town, Clark.
Okay.
And for those who don't know, Clark's dad is been a pastor for a very long time. I respect the heck out of him. And he's meant a lot to me over the course of the past 10 years. And his dad was here in person to support Clark and to see our church. And in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, that's why I'm a little anxious right now.
Dang.
I was like a little insecure because I don't want to disappoint Jim. And I'm like, I wonder what Jim will think of me. And I was like, I love your dad, but I was like, why do I care what Jim thinks about me? He doesn't even live here, you know? But like, I realized that's what it was.
Yeah.
And I was like, no. Okay. And I was able to identify it and then go, no, that's so stupid. What am I doing here? I've got a room full of people who need the truth. That's who I'm speaking this to. And ultimately
That's
God
so
worked it out of me all day yesterday, you know, all day on Saturday. And that's who I'm preaching for. So it was, but that's why like, I used to run away from insecurity and just like, as soon as I'd feel like, oh no, like what, like I have to do whatever it takes to stop feeling insecure. It's like,
Absolutely.
no.
Here's
That's
my
so
favorite
good.
metaphor about this.
Yep.
Because I do the same thing.
Yep.
And I use this metaphor, and I think it can be applied to a lot of contexts. But when you're watching a horror movie, which I know you love
them.
The scary thing is only scary when it's unseen.
Mm.
But like once you're about halfway through the movie, and like the things that are going bump in the night, you see, or like even the end, like the
Quiet Place 2. I was a lot less scared. I've already seen it.
I'm never scared by the end of the movie when like it's like the big climax.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You're like, okay, they're running around the house, the scary things, or whatever it is. I'm like, all right, I see it. What's scary is when it's unseen.
Yep.
And you're like, what is it? What could be around lurking in the dark? The same thing applies to like insecurity. Like if you're running away from it, it feels bigger and scarier and has more power over you because you're not just identifying it and calling it out.
Yep.
Absolutely.
But when you say this is the root, this is why, suddenly it's like, oh, I know that.
Oh
like,
my gosh.
And you can respond accordingly.
So good.
Let's unpack this for just, again, a minute or two more, because what is so profound what we're talking about, I love that you said insecurity, dig deeper, because it sounds like the perfect label. I'm insecure. But if you're like, but why? Like you kind of come to terms with, and I feel like it's what we're talking about, that it's an incomplete label.
Yep.
You feel insecure, but you're not insecure for insecurity's sake. There's something that's happening.
Right.
that
You're
has
insecure
led-
because you're afraid of failure. You're insecure because you're afraid of disappointing someone.
Exactly.
You're insecure because you put your identity in your performance.
Exactly.
Like there's just so many layers that go to it.
That's why I love what you're saying.
If you'll just dig and
So good.
uncover it,
Yep.
you will save yourself. Not that you shouldn't go to counseling still, but you will save yourself thousands of dollars in counseling if you will just dig deeper.
You can skip
into
to
your
session 3.
You can skip to session 3, 4, 5.
Yeah.
If you can just figure out why am I feeling insecure.
Yeah.
And with what we're talking about and that label being incomplete, what is interesting is I would then, loosely then add to that. I think you can have bad targets. Like what you shoot for matters.
Oh yeah.
Like whether you use like a rifle analogy or not, but the whole point is if I have a bad target, I'm going to hit it, but it's still a bad target.
Yeah.
And when it comes to relationships, and I would argue that in a church setting, preacher, musicians, production, like we have a target. We want the target to be Jesus.
Right.
So the bad target is caring what other people think. Like that's a really bad target.
Oh yeah.
Like you'll probably hit it and you might impress some people, but you've lost the reason of why you were actually trying to do what you were supposed to do.
Yeah, that's right.
And I feel like that's what you were alluding to. And I was like, oh man, that's so true.
Yeah.
Like me needing to reset myself typically looks like, because it's so funny that you say this again, moment of transparency for me too, is like, I remember waking up tired. I almost didn't want to be here just because I was actually more tired than usual.
Yeah.
Didn't know why. Got here. Everyone else had like really good attitudes, and I was like the guy who was supposed to like have the greatest attitude and didn't. And I was like, it's gonna be an interesting morning, right? And you sharing what you share, like, oh, you pushed through that. I recall it was probably right as sound check was gonna start, stopping myself. I literally walked to the back so I could be alone for just a minute, and was like, what does God want me to do? Who do I need to become to do that? And how quickly can I get there? And I literally stayed there being like, God wants me to be confident. Because that's not fake. I can believe in his truth and his word, regardless of how I feel about it.
Yep.
My feelings can lie to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to figure this out. And then about 2 minutes later, when you walked in, that's when we were talking. You're like, how are you? I was like, I'm great. That was a true statement.
Yeah.
Had you walked in 5 minutes before, I would have been like, how are you?
Yeah.
Let's talk about you for a minute.
Yeah.
But you see,
That would've been me.
there's so much intention in that. And that's, I think, the thing that God's been teaching me in preparing these messages is that optimism, confidence, and humility, we almost always view those as things that we just stumble into or they're inherent.
Yep.
You're born with it.
You're either
or not.
wired humble, confident,
So
optimistic, or something good happens to you and you're like, great, I'm on a lucky streak. I'm optimistic right now.
Yep.
Or
So
man,
true.
I'm crushing it at work. I'm super confident
good.
right now.
Yeah.
But it's actually like you can work towards and develop these things, but you have to be super intentional about it and put in the work.
And
For sure.
like for those of anyone who's like maybe not super familiar with the Bible, like the term discipleship comes up a lot. But as I've learned, right, to like study it and kind of dig into it and sit in a lot of sermons on it, the key factor of is disciplined. Like that's what makes you a disciple, not the fact that I learned.
Yep.
Like it's the fact that you figured out the intentionality. And I think, as I feel like you're suggesting, is we could figure that out and stay committed to the intentionality. You will be getting better every week, guaranteed. But you have to work at it.
Yep.
And that's the question. Like, do you want to? Do you not want to? Right?
Yeah, for sure.
So it's like, how do you become disciplined in confidence, optimism, and even humility?
Yep.
This is all you said. You're like, our feelings are lie. Like, I think our feelings lie to us most of the time.
Oh, yeah.
But I think that like that all comes down to discipline. Like disciplining yourself to recognize that, identify
Absolutely.
the emotion, identify the root of the insecurity, all of that.
Yep.
But when we let our emotions drive, which we are going to daily, because we're humans, we're emotional creatures, like we just talked about.
Yes.
But if you're letting your emotions drive, that does then come at the expense of, like, if you're faking humility, right, or you're not feeling how, like it, they all just tie into each other. And I think
Absolutely.
the world has just continued to sell us this counterfeit version of all of these things.
Yep.
Absolutely, dude.
That goes completely against our wiring.
No doubt.
It's or what we were made to do. Yeah.
I do want to, just because you alluded to it, like what we had chatted about right before we were hitting record. I started unpacking a TV show or something like in terms of from Brene Brown, and she talked about this. And I think, again, she was on to something huge.
Yeah.
Because I don't know who inspired her idea, but it was still amazing that she said that we are, we think that we're cognitive machines who stumble into feeling. Like, oh, sometimes I feel things. But she goes, that's a lie. We are actually emotional machines, empathy machines. That's why we watch movies. That's why we like music, because you feel, who sometimes think. Intentionality.
Yep.
And if we don't do that, you're going to be like, oh, I'm going to just be feely. And I'll think sometimes, and it's like, well, then you'll definitely find yourself up, down, up, down, up, down. And that's kind of what she was getting at.
Wow.
But it's true with what we're talking about.
For sure.
Intentionality, man, is where it's at. Absolutely.
We round second base, come into third base and home to wrap this thing up. We hit humility yesterday.
Yeah.
Yesterday, it's Monday when we're recording this, whenever you're watching it. Midweek, so you're probably not watching on Monday. On Sunday, we hit humility. Talked about how, the devil does not think that he can get away with just like disagreeing and saying, no, humility's a bad thing. Like, everyone knows you shouldn't be full of yourself. You shouldn't focus on yourself. You should focus on others. And
Absolutely.
But the way he gets you away from that is just by delaying it, right? Not disagreeing, but by delaying. And so first and foremost, you climb your ladder, accomplish the things you want to accomplish in life, get your career set, your family set, your finances set, knock off your bucket list. And then one day, when you've got time, margin, resources, and everything's good, then you can focus on others. Then you can go start an orphanage. Then you can go, and serve and do the things for other people that you should have done. But we end up wasting our lives either climbing the ladder, or once you get to the top of the ladder, you realize, oh my gosh, there's a lot to worry about up here.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's pretty shaky up here.
Yep.
There's a lot more to lose when you actually do climb the ladder.
Yep.
And that's normally how he minimizes our impact. So when you guys were processing through that, for me, as I was processing through it, I really just didn't want to fall off the ladder at church. I was
physically.
I also was worried about
put
you
in the
falling
show
off
notes.
the
Go
ladder.
back and watch that, because when it shook the first time, I was like, I think that's part of the
Bro,
the
I'm
imagery.
not gonna lie. I thought
Is
to
he gonna-
myself, I'm either gonna help a lot of people learn the lesson of humility today by this illustration, or I'm gonna learn the lesson of humility by falling off this thing and becoming a YouTube sensation.
You were thinking that as you were
For
going up?
sure.
100%.
Oh my gosh, I'm dead.
I was like, I'm
That's so
gonna
good.
die today.
Yeah.
And then I look down and there's like people with their phones out recording it. And
They're
I'm like,
waiting, dude.
I'm gonna end up on YouTube in 30 seconds.
Oh, yeah.
This is bad.
Oh, that's
Yep.
so good.
But man, so like, obviously that was all wrapped up in, Jesus set the example for us. Jesus was the one who laid down everything for our sake. And in that, then obviously he started the movement that was the most powerful spiritual movement in history.
Yeah.
That his humility led to maximum impact in his life. So what was God speaking to you guys through that? And what were the things you feel like are the hardest things to apply in that teaching?
I think for me, because I have kids, a wife, so family. Like, you're like, oh, I want to do my part and provide, and so you're already wrestling with this idea of like, but if I come down the ladder, what if? right? What if I don't make enough money? What if I make a big mistake? What if? And then I feel like that faith or trust in God is kind of challenged because you're like, well, maybe he gave me this job so I wouldn't come down the ladder. But when you know the truth, it's like, no, you are always supposed to come down the ladder. But what you're feeling, might be lying to you.
Yep.
It might be still true to your own feelings, but you gotta trust God. That is what faith is. And I just wanted to quickly again read this verse because it's one of Jesus's own words that I feel like sums up part of what you were talking about. What does it look like to come down the ladder? What do we mean in servanthood? Jesus said, "Kings and those with great authority in this world rule oppressively over their subjects like a tyrant. But this is not your calling. You will lead by a completely different model. The greatest one among you will live as the one who is called to serve others, because the greatest honor and authority is reserved for the one who has the heart of a servant."
Whew.
And then Jesus goes on to pretty much say, because even I came to serve, not be served.
Yeah.
Yep.
And it's like, how do you wrestle with that at the top of the ladder?
Yep.
Right?
Oh man.
So again, practically, that's my answer. Like I find myself, that's the crossroad. Whether it's making enough money or more money or starting an endeavor in church or outside of church, for me, that's where I'm like, how do I come down the ladder?
Yeah.
Like, how do I serve people rather than being like, hey, this is what I need from you guys?
Yeah.
What about you?
A lot hit me yesterday. I think I love that we followed up the message on confidence with humility, because those in our heads a lot of times seem like they're at war.
Yep.
Or they
Absolutely.
can't coexist in a healthy way. And I just kept thinking about the most humble people I know are the most confident people I know. There's a quiet confidence to
Would you
someone
say
who's-
they're secure then too?
Yeah,
Like
but
that?
that comes with security. That comes with optimism. I mean, we can tie them all together. We have been, but
Sure.
I was just thinking about the most humble people in my life throughout that whole message, and I was like, "Dang!" And those are some of the most confident people
sure.
I know. And it's not feigning confidence. It's not trying to put on. There's no act there. And those are the most emotionally and spiritually healthy people that I know that I would go to in a time of crisis.
good, man.
Humility is the thing that if I had to pick like a quality that I want to exude at the end of my life, humility is the one. Like
sure.
the people I respect most in my life are incredibly humble people, in a biblical way, not self-deprecating, but in like they think of themselves less.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. I was just joking a lot yesterday, listening to it and wondering what areas of my life I am at the top of the ladder, and I probably don't want to come down, and I don't know. So I think it applies to so much. It was super good, man.
Any Matrix fans?
Oh, I love the Matrix.
Isn't the whole thing the red or blue pill? Like meaning at the part of the movie, right?
Yeah.
I know someone who's watching, like, did you really just ask that? Yes, I did. It's fine.
Isn't that Gremlins? I'm sorry, that was a bad joke. Go ahead.
Great movie, Gremlins.
Oh, so
Great
good.
movie.
Put it in the
Big
show
fan.
notes.
Yeah.
Because it's funny, like if I were to then up to this stage of my journey, like again, just sharing more of my own experience, just how it's been real to my life. I remember at certain points having to take a red pill and then other points taking a blue pill. And here's what I mean by that. When I thought I was a big deal, I had to take the pill that said, you're actually not. Like what you are a part of is way bigger than what you think you are.
Yeah.
But God still has, great life for you. But like that's one pill.
Yep.
On the other side, when I was self-deprecating, being like, oh my gosh, like I'm nothing, and you start to fall into that trap, God's like, hold on. Like you are fearfully, wonderfully made. Don't you know you're amazing? And I've had to find, because there's two sides to that, depending on where I identified, determine what pill I took, so that in the middle, you can grow in, like you said, I think security, intentionality and stuff. But I used to think it was one or the other, like pick a pill. There's only one way. And I found that to not be true.
Yeah, I think too. There's so much brilliance in the teachings of Jesus and Paul in the New Testament that they just knew how to, and I think it was a supernatural ability they had from God to take such complex things and simplify them for the basic human out there that just needs to know how to live this out.
Yep.
Yes.
Because we got to keep in mind, like the conversation we're having right now is so good. It's so thoughtful and engaging and all that. And we're all very educated dudes that listen to stuff all the time. For the vast majority of Christianity, it's mostly been for uneducated people who can't read
Yeah.
that are just trying to figure out, how do I live this out, right?
Yes,
Yep.
absolutely.
And so Jesus and Paul, they shrink it down to say, okay, well, if you want to be humble, just don't look to your interests, look to others' interests. That's it. And if you'll do that, you'll be fine.
Yep.
And it's like the most educated, not the word, the most very, very well-educated guys out there and uneducated people at this on that issue. That's hard, no matter how educated you are.
Yep.
To just look
Absolutely.
to others' interests and not your own. It's like, you're worrying the same worry as I have. Like,
Same.
I want to provide the best life I can for my kids.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
I want to provide great experiences for them. I don't want to say, I don't want to hold them back at all. I don't want them to have to pay for their own college. I'm just like all those things I want for my kids. Right.
Yep.
But what do my kids really need? My kids really need to see me not look to my own interests, but to the interests of others.
Yep.
Yep.
And if they'll see that, even if it means make less money, have less influence, they'll grow up and go, you know what? We might not have had all the experiences, and I might have had to pay for my college. But man, I saw in my dad what it means to look to others' interests and to serve people.
Yep.
And that'll be the most important lesson they could ever learn.
Yep.
Because it'll get them to Jesus.
For sure.
And wouldn't you be asking a different set of questions?
Oh,
Like,
gosh, yeah.
I would assume, and this is probably an oversimplification, but like, what do I need, whatever. When you're like, well, what do they need, and what does God want for them?
Yep.
Like that's literally a 180,
Yeah.
right? So it's like, be intentional with that and watch what happens.
Yeah.
Well, and if you are looking to their interests, not to your own interests, it is in their best interest that they learn servanthood.
Yes.
It's in their best interest that they
So
learn
true.
selflessness.
Yeah.
It's actually in their worst interest that we just keep feeding them experiences and coddle them and comfort them and give them and give them. That's in
Yep.
their worst interest.
Absolutely.
So like I feel like
So
God's just
good.
been wrecking me over that and trying to get me to a place where I'm okay whether it's success or failure.
Yeah.
I think that was something I said yesterday that, when I said it, I was like, this is probably going to be taken by someone the wrong way. But it's like, if you'll do this, you probably will make more money because you probably will.
Yep.
If you will just serve people, serve your clients, serve your team, serve your boss. If you'll start a business with the goal of helping people, it's probably going to succeed.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to make
So
money.
true.
Yeah.
But even if it doesn't, because there's plenty of people out there that I know are being called to come down the ladder, that they're going to fail, or they're going to lose influence.
Yeah.
Yeah. On that level, absolutely.
They're like in the world's eyes, it's failure.
And we have to be okay with that.
Right. I mean, Jesus died.
Yeah.
The dude ended up dead on a cross.
Well,
Yeah.
so this is where I was literally just sitting here thinking,
Dang.
is it worth bringing up briefly what humility looks like in the digital age? Because
Come on.
Good point.
I know a lot of people who like to broadcast their humility,
Yep.
which is for spoiler, not humility. That's not
Correct.
humility at all. And so we're just talking about what losing influence in the world's eyes looks like and all of that.
Yep.
Um,
It's a tricky
Man,
one.
it's-
It's a
yeah.
tricky one.
Yeah.
So I think we've talked about this before,
Yep.
but a good buddy of mine and I had a conversation one time where we were talking about how do we use social media? How do we approach it?
Yep.
And his thing was, well, if you really want to be humble, put nothing on social media.
Yeah.
I'm avoiding it because it just feeds pride, it feeds ego, all that.
Sure.
And I was like, I'm actually on the opposite side. I don't want to put stuff out on social media. But if I'm going to help people, and if I believe in my message enough to preach it from stage to hundreds of people live, why would I not put it online for other people to see? The only thing I'm risking is what my friends think about me.
Yeah.
It means so great. Like, so
Which comes back to insecurity.
it comes back to insecurity. 2 days ago, I put a tweet of mine on my story about insecurity.
Yep.
And I mean, like the minute I put on there, I thought, I wonder what this dude, all my other pastor friends.
Yep.
Sure.
I bet they think,
Yep.
who does he think he is? He thinks he's smart. He thinks he thinks he's clever.
Yep.
And I was feeling insecure. I got like 20 messages from people, man, saying thank you so much
Thanks
for
for
putting
sharing
that out
this,
there.
yeah.
Like that made a huge difference in me today. I'm like, okay, it helped people.
Yeah.
But it required me putting myself out there.
And it requires it. For me, the most important thing is that you're having that internal dialogue.
Yes.
If the dialogue's not happening first, and you're like that, to me tells me that you're wrestling in a healthy way with
Yep.
this balance of confidence, because you should be confident in sharing what you believe is true,
Sure.
and will help people and bring them to Jesus. What a beautiful thing.
Yep.
But I have to turn off social media a lot because I just see a lot of people letting other people know about how selfless they are.
Yep.
And it's just
Absolutely.
performative selflessness. It's performative vulnerability. And I mean, and that's what social media at its worst, just brings out the performative part of us and the desire to feel like we're the center of what's happening.
Yeah. My general approach to
Absolutely.
social media as of late, as of the past year or so, has been family photo album and anything I think will help people.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, I'll look back and go, oh, I mean, really, this is just a family photo album for my kids.
Yep.
Like my Instagram feed has replaced us printing pictures out and putting them in a little sleeve to sit on the coffee table, you know?
Yep.
But if it's that and helping people, then I can't really go wrong.
Yeah.
I still have the debate in my head. What are we doing here?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like
Yeah.
in 50 years, will we all look back and go, hey, you remember that really weird generation of people that like felt the need to post about everything they do? Remember how weird that was?
Yeah.
We might in 50 years look back and or in 50 years,
I
it might
hope-
be hyper accelerated.
I was gonna say, I hope to God that's what happens in 50 years because I'm afraid the opposite's gonna
hyperventilating.
happen.
I'm afraid we're going to be
Please.
live streaming every part of our lives.
Yeah, like God,
Like
honey,
the
nut
Truman
Cheerios
Show.
again or whatever.
Was that the movie
yeah.
The Truman Show?
Yeah,
Like the Truman Show.
Truman
Kind
Show.
of, yes,
Love Truman Show.
Yeah.
FYI, one of my favorite movies ever.
great.
So-
great movie.
I always wonder if I'm in the Truman Show.
Wondering,
Do
where's
you?
The, where's
Oh,
the,
yeah, all
Where's
the
the
time,
camera?
There's so many
so
times I'm
good.
in the grocery store. I'm like, fake person. They're acting. They're not real.
Well,
They're getting
But
paid.
sometimes things are so, this is just my impatience.
so good.
Sometimes things are so annoying to me in a day.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, I'm either on Punked or I'm in the Truman Show.
Oh, dude.
Because there's no way this is naturally.
Where's the
happening.
camera?
Yeah.
I've thought before, this is how sick I am. I've thought before, what if this is the Truman Show? What if all these people showing up to church are actually talking to each other during the week and being like, hey, let's show up to church this week and make him think it was a good sermon?
PD, that's a healthier So
Sorry.
what the Truman Show is to you is what Shutter Island is to me.
Oh gosh.
My wife would tell you, I say this all the time. My worst fear is that not just that I'm like the subject of like a fake documentary, that I am actually in like an asylum on an island, and
you're
like
gonna get out one
you
day.
two are my doctors, and you're like, all right, we're gonna go in there and talk to him, like, and you're all just trying to like bring me out of my like psychosis. That's truly my
We brought you here today
yeah.
to
so-
explain to you.
yeah. That's my fear.
Oh, man. That's
so
good.
going real fast to just add to the conversation with social media. Like social media in of itself is like money. Like what are you going to do with it?
Yep.
Like money is not evil. Giving to the church is not evil.
Yeah.
Like its message
That's a
can
good
change
comparison.
lives, right?
Yeah.
But I have found that it's so hard to gauge the intention of another person, like we're talking about in the world of social media. So for anyone listening, I just want to say, like, yeah, you got to ask the why are you doing it?
Yeah.
Yep.
Like,
Yep.
there's nothing wrong with laying down some truth that you struggle to walk through.
Yep.
Like the Bible is full of people, and I won't go all in depth, but who had very crazy stories,
Yep.
and we're all learning from their life.
Yeah.
So there's nothing wrong with that. But the intentionality of using
Yep.
social media like a humility parade is
Yep.
super wrong.
Well, and I think the gut check that needs to happen, and it's the one I always am checking myself on. Do I want to be selfless, or do I want to be perceived as selfless? That's it. Am I? And like you just ask yourself before every action, after an interaction, was that to give off the impression of selflessness and humility, or is that actually selfless and humble? And that's a constant. I think that's a constant human battle, and I think that's one that Facebook and in general, just social media, exacerbates
So
and
good,
makes an
man.
issue. But
So good.
yeah,
Absolutely. I think that's really good.
It's good, man. Great conversation, guys. Battle ready soul. Here we
Yeah.
are, man. We got one more week of it. So
Yes, it's gonna be so good.
And then we'll wrap it up from there.
And
We
Easter
might-
is coming.
and then Easter's coming, man. We're
I'm so pumped for
a week and a half out from Easter.
gonna be
how
dope.
all that is already forming, man.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. It's gonna be great. So make sure you're all spreading the word. Invite. See you this Sunday at church.
Yep.
Peace.